Coffee Day, everybody. Welcome to D18, the after party.
Whoa, party!
I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani with Chris Barnett and our analysts for this week, Callan Paris, Rory Respicio, and Fernando Esteves. My first question, I want to know, why aren't you guys running?
Well, first of all, thank you for including me in your after party.
Yeah.
As a former senator, it's the first time I got a chance to watch other senators answer the questions in the in the waiting room. I decided that I wasn't going to run some time ago after very few setbacks and deciding also where I think my energy should be best placed. And so I'm involved in the Lou and Josh campaign, and that's what I decided to do because I believe that that race is more important than even me trying to get back in the legislature.
Senator Esteves, now one term. I know some people are disappointed you're not throwing your hat back in there, but let's talk about your decision to not run again.
Absolutely. So after the election, it was November 9th, November 28th, we were blessed with our first child. And that was life-changing. I speak about family and the importance of that, and I decided early on that, I did want to take that opportunity and spend time with my family because you don't get those years back while the legislature will still be there in the future. So I'm not saying it's completely out of the question that I might run in the future, but right now, I just want to enjoy the blessing and enjoy that time. And, life in the private sector is, it's fulfilling.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby, but I think public service is a great venture for anybody.
Right, and it was only a couple years ago you were sitting on, on our set here, answering questions from reporters. So you kind of being a newbie, obviously talking to you 2 years later, a little more seasoned. What was it like watching these candidates who, all three of them have run before?
Yeah, I think when you're watching the other candidates, and having sat there, I think when you're a candidate, you always want to kind of present yourself as something new and a change, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think moving forward now, especially with everything that's been going on in the public is a lot more educated in terms of everything that's going on. They have access to a lot more information. And I think the challenge now for new candidates is applying and having that same understanding that they do while having a little bit more by trying to understand the current process and how they can facilitate solutions.
Do you feel that you got educated and informative responses to the questions? Start with you, Callan.
I think they answered as best they could, but it was a lot of surface material. And I'd like to see candidates who maybe either have one strong issue that they're very passionate about or have a broad understanding of all the issues. And as a graduate of UOG and someone who pays I would say, close attention to politics, all three of these candidates, what they don't have is a strong, maybe social media presence, right? And so as a young person, to learn for the first time about all of their platforms and their positions, I would like to see maybe having that more available either online or, in other ways, not just, this is very informative, obviously, but other ways for them to get their message across.
I don't really know if Jose Pino Terlai is a social media guy.
You don't think he'll start on Instagram?
Maybe check his grandkids, get on Facebook.
Maybe, yeah.
But Mayor Terlai is a grassroots guy.
Right.
You're right. He has great organization throughout the island. He's had a couple successful fundraisers, and every party he has at his house or his son's place, it's just packed with a lot of people. So I guess what Kelly's saying is true, that you got to have different kinds of elements behind the campaign, but some candidates are just going to have a stronger presence on the grassroots side, and others will have a stronger presence on the social media.
Yeah, and you're right about that, and I think that some candidates, especially in the current legislature, spend entirely too much time on social media.
Like who?
Like Senator Regine, Senator St. Nicholas. To their credit, though, it's a great way for them to manufacture consent and control their narrative. But sometimes we got to remind ourselves that social media is not reality.
Well, analytically, with regards to grassroots, social media is the grassroots of 2018. It has access to people. You can communicate directly with them, and it's cheap. I think it meets all the definitions of a grassroots campaign. So I think it's important to apply that. At least my analysis of elections in the future is really the demographics changing. I don't believe that the 2018 election, particularly the gubernatorial, is going to be decided by the old familial connections of the past. I think it's going to be a broader demographic that doesn't necessarily subscribe to the Democrat or Republican pure that's being portrayed, and they really want to be sold. And so I think accessing them through, I think, the media that they're commonly associated with, primarily social media, Instagram, YouTube, I think are definitely the keys moving forward in terms of getting that message.
Definitely moving forward. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I still think, at the end of the day, Wamsa and Umku are very influential. If they tell the family, boy, vote for these guys, I think that's what's going to happen in 2018. But definitely in the future, you're right. Social media is really going to drive a lot of debate. But I think people on social media now, especially people who are like part of the comment army, I'm not sure if they all vote.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like what I think I heard somewhere is 9% of the youth vote. Is that correct? And if that's the case, I mean, and you're just focusing on social media,
Right.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a balance.
But the demographic on social media has increased. A lot of, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents are on social media to remain active with their family. So it is a venue not just for the youth to be able to access them, but generally everybody as a whole. I mean, I'll admit I'm weak on social media. Was doing it all myself, and it does actually have an effect. The reach on that is astounding.
Well, Bree, and Bree, you asked if millennials vote. I could share with my experiences with the Lou and Josh campaign that they have a very aggressive My Generation group, and they're all over social media. And some people have said, I've heard, say to other candidates, don't depend too much on the millennial vote, but just the opposite has to happen. That's always going to be that swing vote, especially in the case of the Democratic Party of Guam, where the party is fielding for very good candidates for the primary election.
Right, let's go back to the beginning. What Callan said, where she said she wants candidates who are very strong in specific issues. Now, these three candidates that we had on, it was really broad, really general answers. And I kind of want to get you guys your take on it, because I like candidates who are very passionate about specific issues, whether it's the military buildup or corruption or Senator San Nicolas fiscal responsibility. But do you lose supporters when you kind of keep the issues that you're relevant on to one or two?
Well, I first agree with Fernando, right? When the candidates present themselves in these kind of forums, they have to be excited, energetic. But I really think that the voters really also have to make an extra point to get to know who the candidates are. Yeah. I mean, we've seen what happened with President Trump. He was saying everything that he wanted to say, and he generated this kind of base that would believe those sound bites. Now that he's president, I'm sure those same groups are saying, well, what did we do? And so on a local election, I'm hoping that this election is really going to come down to who you trust, number one, most importantly, and also who has a plan to move the island forward and a track record of bringing people together.
I want to go back to talking about what we heard tonight from the candidates and maybe your reaction to what they said. And I wanted to talk specifically about the military buildup, because we talked a little bit about grassroots, and then Jose Terlahi, he campaigned with Angel Santos, the late Angel Santos, and he was...
only campaign ran with...
ran with him. But he was anti-military. And so was it surprising to hear that he was so pro-military?
I think it was surprising to hear them all agree on several issues, but that one, that was really surprising, that former Mayor Terlahi said that he fully supported it, and then later he even said he was for independence, which kind of goes almost against the military buildup. But I think Mr. Servinos is the only one who made the qualification to say that we need to be careful how we implement the military buildup if we do it, because he had seen some concerns in Okinawa and other places where it maybe hadn't benefited them. And I think that shows that he was more well-versed in that specific issue, whereas Mr. Blas and Mr. former Mayor Terlahi maybe weren't as much.
And see, that's just a thing. Maybe in Mayor Pito's mind, there's no conflict. That you could support the military and you could support a position of independence, because the Independence Task Force have also said publicly
Right,
that it
yeah.
doesn't mean that you don't have any military
Exactly.
presence on Guam.
Yeah.
And so that's another example, a great example of when these candidates put themselves forward to the media and answer the questions that the public has. I don't think that they should be judged just on their one answer or
Right.
their 30-minute presentation, which is only probably going to give them about 5 minutes of talk time.
It's really important that, and to expand on what Senator Respicio was saying, it's really important that we don't necessarily just apply labels. Being anti-military buildup does not make you anti-military.
Right.
Yeah.
Being anti-military buildup doesn't make you pro-independence as well. And I think the question that came forward from one of the listeners, I think really lends credit to how much more education we have to do in the public so we kind of all understand the issues moving forward. But I think it's important as a new candidate, and to the point that she made, is that when you lend yourself to a certain position and take a stance on it, you should be able to qualify that in many ways. And if you're looking to be a public servant, you have to be able to do that from a fair perspective, which means, when you've come with this determination and this stance, at least in this particular issue, that you're coming having had the conversations with those that are either in opposition to what you are. I think people playing devil's advocate, I think people questioning your core beliefs and what is very important as a policymaker to ensure that in moving forward you're doing it fairly.
Kind of a loaded question, though.
That's
I mean,
right.
do you support the military buildup?
Yeah.
So complicated.
Yeah.
And, it's just one of those issues, either love it or hate it. People are going to come down on one side or the other. But I think it's interesting to note that, we're not going to stop the military buildup. It's a done deal. And I think a good way to look at it moving forward is how do we, make the most of what's going to happen.
But look
And
at
I
what-
think I'd like to see that with some
But
candidates.
look at what this military buildup issue has added. It's drawn out some candidates who
Right.
have been activists.
Specific issue
Matt
candidates.
Pablo, we
Yeah.
have Kelly Marsh, we have
Yeah.
Sabina
Sabina
Perez.
Perez.
So,
Right.
I mean, these are people that the Democratic Party are fielding to also make this their one issue, make
Right.
it the most important issue that hopefully will springboard them into the 35th Guam legislature.
And I'm really interested to see how much, support they're going to get from, Pertay Letexan.
Well, they're being drafted by
right?
Pertay Letexan.
Nice,
They're-
and that's something I think that we really need to see more of on Guam is there are a handful of community activist groups, and I want to see them go out there, register voters, field candidates like Sabina and Dr. Marsh, and I think that's one way to definitely you can comment on Facebook all day, but if you want real results, you gotta jump in.
And then you have candidates like Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes that's running, and Senator Adolfo Palacios. They're running because we know what the mood of the voters were in the last election cycle, and maybe those same voters are saying maybe we need a little bit more continuity and experience in the legislature, so they're going to throw their hats in, and they've decided to run. And then you have Clint Rigel, who's kind of has marketed the campaign in response to the cloud of corruption, and so Clint says that he's only going to accept $50
Right,
from one
right.
company.
But
one
you know what, Clint
individual,
has
one-
that name recognition, and maybe
Yeah.
he's one of the guys who doesn't need more than $50 from people.
But I think he's sincere though.
Right? Yeah.
And the Republican Party, we do are fielding candidates that do have a background in activism and indigenous rights on Guam. Harold Cruz. Amanda Bloss has been very active with the Decolonization Committee, actually very knowledgeable and has made so much headway with the United Nations, I think much more than we've experienced in Guam's history with regards to participation on issues that moving forward. But, I would always advise candidates, the dangers, there's always a risk associated with being a one-issue candidate. And, we kind of see it just looking at the track record. I mean, you've never seen a candidate be, I'm the veterans guy, or I'm this guy. I think because it's important that, while people associate themselves with those different groups and those interest groups, I think people, they know they're more than that, right? I'm a person, I'm a citizen, taxpayer, and I'm a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have to be able to hit all of those individual items to be able to relate to the person to achieve their vote. Same thing, and I think the same applies for activists and cultural or indigenous rights activists moving forward. that while one issue can be potentially your white horse moving forward and your passion issue, you still have to present your ability to understand and comprehend other issues. And you saw that with former Senator, the late Angel Santos. While he was known as the indigenous rights senator, you could still see him being very active on other issues going on with the legislature,
And I think if you are going to be that one issue white horse candidate, then you should be able to tie and relate other issues to the issue that you're talking about. So if you're going to be, the indigenous rights activist, then let me see you talk about how the military buildup affects that. Talk about how outside investment. And I think that's a way you could thrive as a one-issue candidate. But then when you do all that, you're no longer a one-issue candidate.
And then the only place you're going to be able to drive that kind of platform or have that kind of forum to do that really is social media, because with issues and forums like this, you're very limited on time.
I would still encourage candidates, though, to go door to door and canvass.
Absolutely.
And wave on the side of the road, those
do all the old
kinds of
stuff.
experience.
Get chased by the dogs going up at illegal on terrace, and he sang songs.
Just so candidates know that appeared on D18 tonight, they still can go into our comments section and clarify their position on the
Absolutely.
issues.
Right.
Engage.
So, What about recreational marijuana? This is, I really feel like, why are we still talking about this as a yes or no question? I mean, you're seeing a domino effect in the states where just state after state is, approving recreational marijuana, and here we are we're talking, small money, 2% sales tax. We're looking at the little picture, and I think recreational marijuana, it could be a cure-all.
Everything is a process, right? And hopefully this happens sooner than later. In 2010, when I introduced the bill to provide for medical marijuana, I got creamed because the mood at the time, that's not where people are at. But we're hearing more and more people talk about their support for medical marijuana. We're hearing Lulian Guerra talk about the legalization of marijuana to do those very things, provide for the medicinal value and also the money that can be generated from that. So.
And the three candidates who were interviewed tonight, it was right after a financial question. They were asked about the recreational marijuana, and none of them said that they would use that as a venue to create more finances or revenue.
Boy, let's do the medicinal first.
Yeah, it was very interesting that it didn't seem to tie in together, and I think that's one of the problems is that it's hard to get the message to break through unless you are a one-issue candidate, and then when you are, it's hard to have a well-rounded public presence.
Right, but I think if your one issue was legalizing recreational marijuana, I think you would win.
Saipan's doing it.
Saipan's doing it. I mean, and there's a couple different ways, when you look at it, right? Ideas, and a lot of the ideas that are circulating right now are really community generated. It comes from one person mentioning it, then another person mentioning it, and then now it's just an idea that floats. And I think the same thing happens with senators and officials when they put out ideas. And they float. And I think what you do is you build a community consensus at that point. I think really an effort needs to be made, similar with medicinal marijuana, that the referendum just be put out, and that just puts the question to rest.
Right.
If it is a mandate of the people, then actually, it's already been discussed that an adult use program is a lot easier to manage than the complexities of a medicinal program. And if we were to go with an adult use program, we'd be able to stand it.
Senator, just say it. Recreational.
Adult use.
Adult use.
So Republican.
Social use. What did
social use.
And you regulated the way you would tobacco and alcohol.
Absolutely. And it works in many jurisdictions already. Yeah. But I think to really simplify the issue, I think the question just needs to be put before the people. Because it is difficult from senators. Actually, we're barred from that. When the issue first came up, there's some constitutionality questions, especially with the Organic Act in relation. Technically, I can't vote for it if it's in direct contrast with the law. So if the law says this is illegal, I can't vote to say it's going to be illegal. But there's no preclusion from the people deciding what law is going to take into effect. But as a senator, per the Organic Act, I can't vote in direct contrast with U.S. law. So I mean, those are things that we can work through or work around.
Right, and I think when the governor came out, I don't know if it was last year, a couple years ago, I mean, this was a progressive move for Governor Calvo to come out and start this conversation that ended all too quickly on recreational weed, and I think it was the GVB board that came out and basically said, hey, no, we're a family destination, you know, and that kind of like threw water on you know, the fire. We weren't able to spark it up, and I think I
We're
really
able to
feel like
spark it up.
How many more
But
plans
on
we
a,
got?
but also look what's happening on a national level.
Yeah.
When
Right.
Trump came in, he didn't want to talk about marijuana, and Attorney General Sessions said that when he found out that the KKK smoked marijuana or like was involved with marijuana, they support something like that. They were saying they're more than bad people, and so now with the Warner Gardner amendment, the bill that's going through Congress, and there's a similar version in the House that Congresswoman Berdalio signed off on, Trump is saying that he will defer to states and that he would sign that bill if it
Right.
got past Congress.
Yeah.
So-
Which is funny, right? Because that's actually the basis
Yeah.
for the Republican view, right? I think we should
Yeah.
defer more
Defer
things
to
to the
Yeah.
states,
Yeah.
Right.
defer more things to the territory. So I am happy to see some of those things that were promised with regards to that. Sorry, it's sad it took so long, but I think the deferral to the states and territories in enacting laws or being able to enact laws that we see is in our best interest, I think is really positive to us moving forward, and to add other economic venues that we can take advantage of to move forward.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in these times of financial crisis.
I wanted to go back to the show on D18 tonight and the candidates that you saw tonight, and just get your overall assessment on how you felt they did and how they communicated their message to the viewers, and which one stood out for you. Or
Take it
maybe
away,
none
Cal.
of them did. I don't know.
You know, I'd have to say the one that stood out for me the most was Mr. Ben Servino, only because he did a better job, I believe, in qualifying the statements that he made.
Yeah.
I think just from a communication standpoint, he did a good job of looking into the camera and addressing, you know, the audience that he was really trying to address, and I think that goes a long way. I think while usually people who are a bit more excited or excitable and have a larger presence tend to command more of a presence. I think he did well considering his character, and to command a presence just with his demeanor. I mean, which was fitting for his character. Although I do, you know, and I have told him this before, I do believe he needs to broaden his platform and be able to address multiple issues of Guam, especially the most serious ones plaguing us.
Senator Respicio?
Well, I always go back to they're putting themselves out there, they're presenting themselves to the public. I thought that each of them, in their own right, they were able to express what their backgrounds were. Ben Servino did great, and also Roland Blas, he talked about his work experience, and so in the little time he got, he put that in there. Pito also, I think, for me, just listening, if I didn't know anything about him, I think he did a good job in presenting himself to the public in terms of what his law enforcement experiences are, his political experiences, and his role as a village mayor. And so I guess that's why I think these things are getting harder and harder. In the 14 years that I've been in the legislature, I don't think there was ever any after-party discussion.
Maybe you just weren't invited.
Well, no, not invited, but even to hear that there was a panel that actually talked about how these candidates did. So in this age of social media and the technology, candidates just have to step it up.
Yeah.
I think they all did really great, but I think it's clear that Mr. Servino had the strongest grip on his platform and had practiced that the most, maybe. Whereas the other two candidates seemed to speak more off the cuff and from the heart. He seemed the most polished to me.
Well, can I just mention an observation when Pito talked about having 100 undercover agents for like 100 police officers at the time? You can't even get 30 right now if you're lucky.
Right.
Yeah, so
I
all of
think-
us had that reaction.
Well, we don't know because they were undercover.
They were
Right, you never know.
undercover.
You know, they could still be undercover, and we just don't know.
And I think Pito definitely a grassroots guy, and you know I like how he stays in his wheelhouse. He's not trying to be something he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what you get with Pito, you're going to get a guy who obviously supports independence. Very Chamorro rights, but level-headed enough to embrace the military buildup. I mean, maybe we need to hear more on his stance on that. law enforcement background. We don't really have that. Usually every legislature we have legislature like a boy band. You have your doctor senator, you have your policeman senator. You know what I mean?
Your lawyer senator.
Tello was the singer. And
Yes.
Well, I do want to add
Right.
that Pito did bring, or Mr. Talahi does bring, a lot of wisdom with him, with his experience, and I think he was able to express that, and so it does bring a lot to the table, and I should have quantified that earlier.
Yeah. Well, we had 2 Jotnia candidates, Roland Blas,
Yeah.
and now all these guys have run at least once.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder, is the Joe San Augustine effect going to take place where, people, I feel last election, there was probably a conversation a lot of people had in the voting booth with themselves is like, gosh donuts, if this guy keeps running, I'm going to give him a shot. And, Roland Blas, Pito, Ben Servino's run once before. I wonder if, maybe second, third time's a charm for these guys.
I think another thing too is that your average voters kind of overwhelmed this election season with the corruption disruption that's been going on.
Corruption disruption.
And so to see
Hashtag.
these guys who have been politically adjacent for a long time but aren't necessarily career politicians or
Right.
established in the legislature already, I think a lot of people might be willing to say, you know what, this is what we need, someone who understands the process but is fresh-faced, because everything else is kind of
Tainted.
yes. I was going to say a dumpster fire, but tainted works. Yeah. I think
Burning
that might-
Right, right.
Burn it up. Yeah, spark it up. I think that might work in their favor for many voters. At this point in the election, I mean, it's not even July yet.
How does Roland Blas capitalize on his reputation as the island's premier Tetsa?
Well, at least we know when he's in session that it won't go past like
Covered.
7 p.m.
You know who's blessing the table.
Yeah.
We know who's doing prayer at
He's
session.
got a lot of
Right.
family ties in the community. People he's done like genealogy work for. He did
Right.
like the Liberatu clan reunion, and
Yes.
he remembered me and which branch I was from. There's 12 Liberatu branches, and I was like, oh my god, that's to me that
And
was
I think that
impressive.
that's his challenge as a candidate is, you're right, he's experienced in a lot of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with lawmaking or, being a politician, but I feel like they're, experiences that are valid, but I think maybe he's one of these candidates who needs to hook up with someone who kind of manages his personality
Yeah.
and, someone like a right-hand type of person.
Do
who
they
can
have
chief of
get
staff.
you
that?
out
Do they
there.
have that within the parties? Or you mentor?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. They could, but really the candidate at the end of the day is really responsible for their own
Right,
candidate.
right.
Well, I'll tell you what the Democratic Party is doing. They've actually had candidate workshops where they had a seminar with the Guam Election Commission about the campaign finance rules and regs, and also they had a seminar where people came in and talked to them, basically messaging the do's and don'ts.
Right.
That just
And I think we need to see more of that. One big issue with the legislature, especially when you have a lot of these old guard politicians leaving, is the gaping hole when it comes to institutional knowledge. And I was talking with former Governor Gutierrez the other day, and I was like, Gov, maybe instead of trying to run for governor every election, maybe you need to start mentoring.
Yeah.
Congresswoman Berdalio, she's not going to be a congresswoman forever. I think we need to see, and in the Republican Party too, a lot of these older candidates start taking younger candidates under their wing instead of the legislative races. A lot of times, you're right, it's like every man for himself.
Yeah.
There's so many candidates
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
right now.
So many.
I mean,
And
what
so
you're gonna
I'm just wondering if the party knew, like, oh, just come on in, just let anybody run Democrat.
Well, at the
run
end of the
Republican.
day, the election for at least for the legislature is 30 people. That's what it always comes down to. That's what the primary guarantees us: 30 candidates, and of that, 15 with 50% attrition of that. But I think Senator Respicio can agree. I think a lot of the help comes, especially when you're in office, comes from the staff. There's a lot of institutional knowledge
Right.
with the staff, the policy writers, that are a great asset to, and you really have to have a good understanding of not just what's going on currently, but legislative history, because context is so important to good policy. But with regardless of whether they have all of their experience in the legislature for the job they want, in a typical job, that's exactly what you would want. But the legislature is such a unique kind of organization. It was always by design, in my belief, to be the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, right? A representation of the population, right? Our representatives,
Yeah.
and that's the big difference between the professional politician,
Yeah.
the career politician, or an elected official or a representative.
All right, closing
Boom.
comments?
Right.
Closing comments?
Thanks for having me. It was
All
fun.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you,
the
guys.
opportunity.
All
Well,
right.
wow, this first episode with you guys, I think a lot of different perspectives sitting on this couch, and we're just getting started, really, Bree.
Yes, we are. Make sure to join us again Monday for D18 tonight, 6:30 on KUAM TV8, streaming live on Facebook, and the after party.
All right, for Sabrina Salas Matsanani and our panelists, my name's Chris. Adios.